right, it is that time. Actually, I'm a minute behind, so sorry about that, guys. But I did get notification of Instagram's online, you or Facebook is online. Danny Koyman, how you doing, bud? Jay Colley, welcome, welcome. Scott Schmid. We got a few jumping in on Instagram. Texas Swine, Henry Mack, Arizona, the Western Huntsman. How's everybody doing? Pack 'em Out Apparel. How you doing, bud? And imagine that. It's still saying sending data to YouTube. I did actually delete it and put everything up, so we'll see what happens. Guy Western Contours, Caleb Newton, how you doing? Facebook, Greg Schlinker, Will Geist, Danny Koyman doing great. Jay Tappenden, hello. So it's kind of funny too, because my son had a music concert tonight for his school, and so I had to leave early to come home and get all this, and I'm kind of getting stuff, up, and also trying to ship some hats to some Patreon members. And all of a sudden I remembered, I'm like, dang it, I have to open up the chat, and lo and behold, look at that, update required. So that one's updating as we're going. So, Guy, I am doing well. How are you doing, bud? So, Kelly Ford, how you doing, bud? Sean, welcome, welcome. Sean, the newest member of the Patreon group. In fact, Sean, I'm trying to ship your hat out right now, but that computer doesn't want to connect to the scale, so we've just got problems all over the place. So, Danny, I know you've made that comment each week about YouTube. The only problem, it puts Guy and I in a difficult position. So, Eldon Williams, welcome. Jeremy, hello. And look at that, Will Geist, you pronounced my name correctly. Hey guys, guess what? Bugle Me This and Slingin' Sticks has just commented from YouTube. So I think we got it going. So Jeremy, good evening. How are you? Scott Schmidt, I have a calling contest to win in less than 2 weeks. And yes, Scott, I did talk to Mark about getting in some ECA reads, some Rip It Reds, Rip It 450s. So, all right. I think everybody is coming on. I like this. Ruben J. Martin, Chaos. Yes. Caleb, I got a YouTube notification. Sweet. Yes. I can conquer modern technology. So, Guy, there's hope for us yet. YouTube's online, so we'll have something to grab for Feature Friday. So I'm just waiting for the dang chat to upload now. I have it open on the web version, or the browser, which will help us. So while we're kind of waiting for this, Jason O'Hare, good evening. While we're waiting for that, so tonight we're going to kind of talk about grunt tubes. So it's not going to be a discussion of which tube I think is the best, because that's kind of a subjective question. But we are going to talk about, the different shapes and why there's the different shapes and what's the benefits of each, and, pros and cons and that kind of stuff. And just like always, answer your questions. So Benito, YouTube working on my end. Finally, I like it. In like Flynn, Jeremy Gilliam. I also got a YouTube poke. Just prefer Instagram, better audio quality. Okay, good. That's good to know. So, and what's funny is that's the less expensive of the two microphones. So I guess that shows that money can't always buy you happiness or good audio. So, Jay, hey, we need to figure out some dates you want to come up and call. So, okay, Jay, you must be talking to Danny, because I know each week. Do you guys, okay, Jay and Danny, do you guys have this conversation about getting together and planning your hunts outside of Wapiti Wednesday, or do you guys just wait for this chat window for you two to have this conversation? And it throws me off because the way the chat window is on this, it breaks it out as individual. It doesn't show that you're responding to somebody else. So I don't know. Let me know, guys. I mean, I don't have a problem with you guys having conversations while the live stream's going. And I mean, it's kind of like talking in class. We all used to. So I've been waiting for this, heading to Southeast Idaho this year. Eric Nelson, good luck to you on that. So, okay. I think we are going to get rolling. So let's jump into it. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Batiste from the Elk Calling Academy, and this is Wapiti Wednesday Q&A. If this is your first time here, welcome. We're glad to have you. The way Wapiti Wednesday works is we typically start out with a subject, and tonight we're going to be talking about grunt tubes, the different shapes, the different sizes, styles, benefits, pros, cons, all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't matter which platform you're from, whether you're joining us from YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. Part of Wapiti Wednesday Q&A is also answering questions you may have. We all know that the learning curve with elk hunting is huge, and especially when you are first starting out, there are a ton of questions. It is a huge learning experience. So that's what Wapiti Wednesday Q&A. It's basically here to help you guys shorten that learning curve, and that's everything that Elk Calling Academy is all about. Also, whichever platform you're from, if you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, make sure that you like, subscribe, or follow, and make sure you turn on any notifications so that way you're notified each time that we go live with Wapiti Wednesday, or if we upload videos. So we do have some videos coming up. I have the tutorial on the Idaho Hunt Planner. I also just picked up the Steve Chappell Signature Series line from Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls I'm going to be getting a review on. Plus, weather is starting to cooperate, which means can get outside. And of course, that means that the 2019 Grunt Tube Challenge is coming. So, all right, here we go. Got a few more jumping in. Bubba Ford, how you doing? Sorry guys, I'm just reading the comments from Danny Koyman and Jay Colley. So they're kind of getting some pretty good things lined out here. So Scott, on Facebook it shows who is responding to who in my feed. Yes, in Facebook it does, but I actually am broadcasting, Scott, using Restream, and then Restream actually restreams to both Facebook and YouTube at the same time, and then it grabs chats from those as they come in. So, all right, grunt tubes. Grunt tubes, bugle tubes, I mean, there's a lot of different names for them. What are they? What do they do? And are they important? So basically, the best way to think about it is a grunt tube or bugle tube, whichever you want to call it, is basically a megaphone. Okay, it is an amplifier. So, but the different shapes and the different sizes of them do have different benefits. I mean, you can go from the smallest, the Game Changer is considered a grunt tube, to the largest, which this is, I can't even fit it in the whole screen. This is the tube from Smith Game Calls. It's probably the Smith Game Calls and the Rump Shaker from Wapiti River are probably two of the largest tubes on the market. So, okay, so what are the benefits to grunt tubes? Well, first off, like I said, amplification. They're going to give you more volume, which allows you to reach out a little farther. Also, when you've had an elk up close screaming at you or hearing, they have some pretty good volume. So with, us and our lungs and the way everything is designed, we can't get that volume that they can. Also, I mean, if you think about it, we are trying to mimic and emulate an animal whose lungs are twice the size of ours, whose esophagus is twice the size of ours. Their chest is big, it's barreled. So, we kind of got to cheat, and that's what grunt tubes do. So as there's different styles. You can go from, small hose type to, the big wiffle ball bat type. The thing is with tubes is as you start getting larger, so, your Bully Bull and Extreme Bully Bull from Rocky Mountain, your Unleashed from Phelps, your Antagonizer from Mile High Note Game Calls, the new Grunt tube from Smith. What's the advantage of those bigger tubes? Well, the bigger tubes are actually going to allow that sound to expand a little bit more, which means basically it's going to showcase your bottom notes a little bit better. So your wiffle ball bat style is going to give you that depth, that bottom end. But on the flip side, because of their size, they can be kind of a pain to carry, I guess you would say. So also they're generally pretty rigid. So, you can't wrap them around your body. So some of you guys, that are solo hunters, if you're not using something like the Grunt tube holder from Bendable Products, you're not going to be able to use those straight rigid tubes. Well, let me back up. You're going to have a more difficult time using that tube and throwing your sounds around versus something with a flex tube that you can run, and that mouthpiece is right here and that barrel is pointing back behind you to where you're sitting here with your bow, you're set up, and you just tuck your head and blow that sound back behind you for directional. Each tube has its benefit, and the reason I said I'm not going to come on here and say this tube's the best is because, like I said, it's subjective. It's what are you wanting to do? I mean, what sounds are you wanting to do? Are you wanting to sound like a big bull? Are you wanting to sound like a small bull? Now that's not to say that if you go with a big tube, you can't sound like a small bull, or if you go with a small tube, you can't sound like a big bull. You can. It just, there's a difference in the sound, and there's a difference in the bottom end. Now, you can be effective with either one you use. I mean, heck, look at, Wayne Carlton has used that small skinny style tube pretty much all of his career, and that guy's put a couple of bulls on the ground. He's enjoyed a little bit of success. So then you get into mouth styles, mouthpieces. You have small ends, you have flared ends. I mean, there's just a ton of options out there. Really, so what are the advantages of those different mouthpieces? So a smaller end, usually will create a little bit more back pressure, will kind of, for a beginner, you can control your sound a little bit better just because you're having to, pierce your lips a little bit. But on the flared end is easier to lip ball. So, I mean, as a new caller, you kind of, and I have noticed too that you do get a little bit of a sound difference between a flared end and a smaller end. I prefer that smaller end just because, that's what I learned on. And like I said, I like the sound that it produces, a little bit better. So, in fact, I saw something. Tony Gilbertson from YouTube, you had to say it. The old Monarch tube was the best of both worlds. Big tube with a flex tube. I know, and Tony, I agree 100%. The Monarch that at the time it was Bugling Bull Game Calls, it's Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls now. At the time when they came out with that Monarch, and still to this day, I still think that Monarch is one of the best sounding tubes ever produced. Because Tony's exactly right. You had the best of all worlds. So you had the flex tube, you had the expansion of, the larger bell end. You had a small end, but you could pop that small end and go with the bigger tube. So it was something that you could really do a lot of different things with to customize and really get that to your liking. There's one other tube on the market right now that has that capability, and that is the Native by Carlton tube, because they have that acrylic turned mouthpiece that is designed like a trumpet or a trombone mouthpiece that helps you putter your lips, that helps you do that lip ball. But you can also take that out if you want, so you have the best of both worlds. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't take the Unleashed and cut that flared end off. The only problem with this is, as soon as you modify that tube, as soon as you cut that off, you don't have that flared end anymore. You can't attach it. So, I mean, I guess you could get some glue. I guess you could get, some shrink wrap, and you could get that thing back on there. And I think, in the Phelps lineup, the Unleashed has the flared end. The Dirk Durham tube actually is cut down and has that skinny end. So now, the other thing you can do is you can Frankenstein, meaning you can take a couple of different tubes and put them together. Like I've done it where I've taken the Bully Bull tube, and then I've taken a section of the hose from a power bugle, cut that mouthpiece down on the Bully Bull, and then hot glued that flexible part. So now I had, a nice flexible tube that could wrap around me. But the only problem with that is you're still stuck with that big end. So, which, remember, bigger end is better for lip balling. It's easier to buzz your lips. So let me see. What about tubes that create back pressure? So, Stephen, and most of the tubes on the market now create some sort of back pressure. They will vary a little bit. What you want to stay away from is, tubes that just have a real big opening that just goes, straight. You want something that flared, restricts down a little bit, and then goes into the bell. That's what's going to give you your back pressure. And, why is back pressure important? So, Mason, how you doing, bud? So, Jonathan Alexander. Back pressure actually helps you stabilize your notes and control your notes, and controls your note changes. As a new caller, you don't really know how to build that back pressure yourself. So that's why the advantage of a tube that, has that back pressure already built into it will really, really help you with your note stability. So, oh, look at that. Okay. Okay, we got questions coming in both sides. Let me do this. Instagram. Lars, shirt showed up today. Fits great and have it on right now. Decal is on the truck as well. Awesome. Lars, thank you for representing. Scott Schmidt from Facebook. Do you know if anyone has developed a tube with actual sound wave technology, or is it mostly trial and error? And yeah, that sounds good for development. I don't know, Scott, per se, if anybody's actually gone into a sound wave chamber and actually done that. There is a lot of thought process that goes into making a tube. It really is getting a lot of pieces and kind of putting them together and building, blowing. Then you get into how thick of a plastic, because basically you don't want the plastic too thin, because the plastic will vibrate, but you want it thick enough that it reduces the vibration, but still thin enough that it does vibrate a little bit to add to it. So there is a lot of thought that goes into tube making. So Eric Nelson from Facebook. My first season, I had some guys tell me you sound like a flute. That week, my first year calling, I called in 5 bulls. I figure it was because I sounded like a little bull. It's not necessarily that you sounded like a little bull. It's sometimes on the smaller tubes, they kind of hit this pitch that bulls really, really like. And, we touched on it when we first talked about it that a grunt tube is just an amplifier. So it's going to amplify the sound of the reed that you have. So depending on the reed that you're using, so that's going to dictate also kind of that higher pitch that you're getting and, how you're sounding. Now, as you become a more experienced caller, you can learn to add some of that bass and some of that depth. So, Henry, what works best in Arizona? I am a new caller. Henry, that's a tough question to answer. What works best? I'm sure there's guys that hunt Arizona with all different types and shapes and sizes of tubes, and they call in elk. It's not necessarily what tube works the best. It's what tube works the best for you. What has the comfortable features on it, what has the packability for it. So let's talk about this real quick. So I talked about the 2019 Grunt Tube Challenge. So one thing that we see all over on social media, what's the best this, what's the best that, what's the best this, and people are very, very quick to hammer on their keyboard and throw out what's best. In 2017, I did the first Grunt Tube Challenge that I grabbed 6 or 7 of the top tubes on the market. I got off camera and I bugled. I did multiple bugles with each tube, and I popped something up on the video, tube number 1, tube number 2, tube number 3, and asked people to vote only on sound. It took the brand right out of the equation. So you had the ability to listen to a tube and go, I like the way that one sounds. That would be a way to find the best tube for you to just hear this tube out in the woods and go, I like the sound that tube produces. And what's crazy, in 2017, when I posted that video, I had several people that all of a sudden started commenting, oh, such and such is the best. I simply responded, great. Tell me what number it is. People were pretty surprised when I released the results, because there was a lot of people that thought they were voting for their best tube, and it wasn't. They voted for a completely different company. Now, here's what's interesting. When I did this when I did this test last year for 2018, I did the 2018 Grunt Tube Challenge. We had 3 times as many views on that video as the previous year, but we only had a third of the votes. People all of a sudden were afraid to vote when they didn't know what the brand was. That's completely wrong. Listen to what those tubes are producing. And in fact, last year, the tube that came, so the first year, the Unleashed tube from Phelps was the tube that came out on top. Last year, it was the Glenberry Golden Tone Grunt tube is what came out on top. So, okay. Power Bugle is good. Power Bugle has called in a ton of elk. So, does the vet system really make a difference with controlling tones? Tony, if you think it does, it does. I don't know. I know a lot of new callers have a lot of confidence in the vet technology or the vet system from Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. So if that is something that gives them confidence and they think it's helping, then by all means, great, have at it. So, me personally, I don't know. I don't really notice a big difference in controlling the notes, but I've been blowing on a diaphragm reed for a couple of years now. So, Caleb, how many bulls do you think you call in a year if you had to guess? Ooh. Last two seasons in the new areas, it's been 20 plus bulls that we have called in, and that's 40 yards or less. So not all shot opportunities because one thing happens or another. So I would say that's kind of an average. So some years a little higher, some years a little less. So, um, but I definitely know that our approach and what we do really increases the number of bulls that we call in, just because we're not just stuck to one play. We really pay attention to the cues that the bull's given to us, and we can generally get a good idea of what type of bull that we're uh, working with. And once you understand what you're working with, you kind of tailor your calling approach. I mean, we still do the same thing. We're still doing a breeding sequence, but based on the age class of the bull that we're dealing with, we kind of taper off and focus on one, maybe more one side of it than the other, so that way we don't intimidate bulls. Um, so it's taking that bull's temperature, realizing what you're dealing with. So if you figure that out, Caleb, you'll call in a lot more bulls. So let's see. What's the likely possibility of stalking an elk without calling? Robbie, Robbie, it can be done. There's lots of people that basically sit on an elevated position and glass and locate elk, and then they sneak in. So that's the thing with elk hunting. It's there's all different approaches to it. You can call, you can tree stand, you can, spot and stalk, you can, spot and ambush. So and honestly, if you really think about it, if you say that, oh, I'm just an elk caller, that's the only way I hunt, not really, because there are parts throughout your season that you will spot, that you will stalk, that you will ambush. So you really apply a lot of the different techniques throughout an elk hunt. But Robbie, to answer your question, yes, you can be successful. You're probably going to have a lot more learning experiences than you are punch tags, but each one of those could be successes. It depends on how you take that information and what you do with that information from each encounter. So, depends on your area and the density of elk with bull to cow ratio have a play in there. Mason, what does? The bull to cow ratio. I don't know. Mason, expand on that a little bit. All right, Steven, I seen that video and voted. Danny, I'm not afraid. I like it. Jay Colley, who makes it? Who makes what? Okay, what's best is funny. I started calling with a PVC pipe. I've spent hours recording, but sound is not the biggest factor. It's finding a hot bull. And it's not necessarily a hot bull, guys. You can take a completely quiet bull that is nonchalant, and based on what you're doing, and you got to understand, with calling, you're telling a story, you're painting a picture. If you paint the picture right, you can take that bull that is just bedded, not really interested in anything in the world, and then by you painting the picture and doing things right, you could turn him into the hottest, most amped up bull on the mountainside. It's not that if all you're wanting to do is challenge and aggressive and be that, then yes, you do need to cover ground and find hot bulls. But there are other approaches that you can turn that dormant, non-interested bull into an extremely hot, interested bull. You can make that happen with your calling. So, and in fact, I just uploaded last week. I gave the herd bulls over on the Patreon side the latest chapter in the instructional calling series, and started breaking into the breeding sequence with those guys and talking about the sounds and the approach and the principles. So Mason, he was saying that he thought 8 elk was good for him. He may not have as much elk in his area as you do. Not necessarily. So I mean, yeah, population numbers in the area is going to play into the number of elk that you call in each year. So that's definitely a given. I mean, I certainly cannot go into an area where there's absolutely no elk and call in bulls, because you can't call in what's not there. So let's see. Call to them, not at them. Exactly. 20 plus bulls called in 2 seasons. I think I'll keep listening, Steven. I like it. Greg, have to be open-minded for sure. The tube no one heard of or not the most advertised popular might jive with a person's calling style the best and be the missing link he or she has been searching for. Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I started that Grunt Tube Challenge. Because people, my close friends and people that know me know that I am a tube junkie. If there's a new tube on the market, I'm going to get my hands on it because I want to play with it. I want to know what it sounds like, and I want to know how it compares to what I always have. Then on the flip side is I will take tubes that maybe I didn't really like, and I'll start chopping those up and combining them with pieces and parts of others, just to do that Frankenstein and try to come up with something. Just see what I can create that's different out there. And that's the fun of this. I mean, you can tinker, you can play, and there's nothing that says that you can't just grab a package and you're stuck with that. You definitely have that option that you can tinker. I mean, the PVC. So Lance, I've done that on tubes before too, where I've cut the barrel end off and I, found attachments and put hot glued PVC pieces on it just to, try, okay, is that bigger? Well, elk's esophagus, it's this size. Well, if I find something in that diameter, is it going to help my sound? Is it going to help my tone? I don't recommend doing that for beginners because you have absolutely no back pressure. So your air will just flood right out of it. So, but have fun with it. So, love your tubes and reeds. Where are you going to be this year at the end of September? Open invitation to come out with me in Arizona. So, Aaron, I have no idea. Hopefully, end of September. Still going to be up on the mountains here in Idaho, continuing to get some more footage for you guys and learning experiences and in the field stuff for you. So, if the wind is right, you can walk with a herd on the mountain. I have before. It was awesome. So, Danny, yeah, we've talked about wind being your ally. Jeff just got here. What's the topic tonight? So, Jeff, we're kind of talking about grunt tubes. Different shapes, different sizes, advantages, disadvantages. So, it seems 90% or more of September elk hunters are focused on bugling in a bull, almost more important to hear that bugle than it actually is to shoot an elk. Do you feel the cow call is underutilized? Yes, Scott, I do. A cow call is a very, very effective tool. And in reality, you can use your cow calls the right way to set up your bugles, and you will get so much more reaction. But here's the thing too, you need to pay attention to the information that the bull is giving back to you. And I've seen people do this time and time and time and time and time again, that Scott, you're exactly right. They're so focused on that bugle, and I got a bugle in this bull. I want to get into a bugle frenzy. They will cow call, and the bull will answer immediately to that cow call, and they immediately turn right to the bugle, and they just start screaming at them, and they get no answer at all. And they're like, "Well, that's just dumb. What happened? Oh, public land. Somebody came up over the top, or wind shifted, or this or that." But what's even funnier is they'll bugle, 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 try to get the bull to respond. They'll cow call. That bull will immediately hit the cow call back, and then they go right back into the bugling. And then they can't understand why that elk doesn't come running into the bugle. The elk told you what he liked. I mean, if you just pay attention to that information that bull is giving you, what is that elk responding to? Your chances for success are going to increase dramatically. So, Lars, how many different calls do you carry with you? So, I normally have 3 or 4 of my favorite diaphragm reeds, but I have multiple of each of those. So, there's really 4 reeds or 5 reeds that I carry with me, but I have multiples of each of those. And then I normally have an open reed cow call or two, because I think an open reed cow call is one of those things that maybe don't get utilized as much either. I know I'm guilty of kind of going away from it and focusing, way too much on the diaphragm. In fact, that video that I posted of that elk hunt from 2005, I used an open reed in there, and that got me thinking, man, why did I ever go away from that? Why did I stop using that so much in my setups? And so, yeah, definitely going to plan to do that. And then, I just have one tube with me, but I will change out the tubes. So, like I said, I'm a tube junkie, so I still have my bugling bull game calls duffel bag, I guess you would say, that we used to throw all of our calls in when we go to shows. I'll throw all my tubes in that thing and take it to camp. I'll swap out tubes. My hunting partners will go in there and grab tubes out of it. So we switch around and play and use different things. So glad to be back for live show. I've missed a month or so while finishing my move to Montana. Chris, welcome back. Glad to have you. Cheyenne, I have fun making my own tubes. In fact, Cheyenne and I have talked about this. In fact, that term Frankensteining a tube, that actually came from Cheyenne. So we were talking one night, and he's the one that coined the phrase Frankensteining tube. So Cheyenne, look forward to seeing you in Coeur d'Alene as well. And sweet, you're gonna bring your latest tube, Cheyenne. I'm actually bringing one up too that I'll show you. So okay, how can you gauge an age of a bull by a bugle? Really, really tough, Lance. So typically, the rule of thumb is if they have more base, if they have more bottom end, they're generally a more mature bull. So, but that's not always the rule of thumb. You will get some oddities in there where you can get a young bull sounding like the king of the mountain, and you can have the largest bull on the mountainside that just has a little tiny whistle. So, but generally the rule of thumb is that deeper tone, that deeper bass will tell you that that's an older age class bull. So who makes the power bugle? Jay, that is Elk Incorporated, ELK Incorporated. So Cheyenne, we use a suckable method sometimes. We get really crazy with cow call and estrus wines because we don't want to go into a hole after an elk. We have multiple call-ins a year using this method, and it's basically you're creating that excitement, Cheyenne, and you're that bull's feeling like he's missing out on a party. So Lars, what's the benefit of an open reed cow call? Open reed cow call typically has a little bit more volume. It has kind of a little more nasaliness to it, nyah at the end. It is a good tool to carry just because it does change things up. It gives you a different pitch. It gives you a different tone, a little different frequency a little bit. Um, and an open reed for people that have the gag reflex, cannot use a diaphragm reed. An open reed cow call is a great option to go. Even for you experienced callers, don't rule out carrying an open reed cow call. Open reed cow calls, again, have called in a lot of bulls over the year. Jason, I love the tone and volume on larger bugles like the Unleashed, but feel like they tire me out. Am I doing something wrong? I'm not going to read the last part, Jason. So, no, I mean, the thing with the bigger tubes is, yeah, you have a larger item to pack. You have more weight. I mean, it's not like they're really, really heavy. I will tell you this, though, Jason, that Grunt tube holder that Bendable Products just came out with really kind of, and in fact, I went and took a lot of the lanyards off of my Grunt tubes just because of that tube holder from Bendable. I mean, you can mount it high up on your pack so that you basically just grab the tube and put it right up and over and right down into that holder, so it's sitting right here over your shoulder. You can mount it on your hip belt. So there's a lot of different places that you can mount that thing. Then you don't have that string hanging around your neck, rubbing your neck, or you bend over to pick something up and the tube falls forward and smacks you or falls off. So, all right. Does volume or pitch matter in a call, or is knowing what you're saying more beneficial when calling in bulls? Definitely knowing what you're saying. So, when you know what you're saying and you understand the language, you can tailor what you're doing and what you're saying to fit the situation of what you're trying to paint or what you're trying to portray. So, prime example is you're wanting to portray this lost cow, for example, and you're having that urgency, lost cow, but then all of a sudden you go into regathering mews and assembly mews and some of these different mixes like that, or aggravated or frustrated type sounds. So that's not all jiving. I mean, you were lost, but then you kind of went agitated and aggressive, like you were defending or kind of warning off another cow. So those are kind of really important. And so yeah, it's beneficial, more beneficial of knowing what you're saying. So Andrew, how long do your reeds typically last before you feel like you need to be replaced? Tough question to answer. So there's so many variables that go into the longevity of a reed. Last year, so like for example, the 1.5 from Native by Carlton, I went through two of them, and I didn't even change to the second one until about third week of the season, and that reed is still usable. So, but the indicator is if you start having a reed that cow call is really, really, really easy, and you can do all cow vocalizations, but as soon as you bugle, it doesn't hold that high note anymore. That's a pretty good indication that that reed is kind of on its last leg for bugling. But if you're looking for a reed to just do cow sounds on, I mean, that's the thing. You can extend the life of some of these reeds. You may not be able to you may not be able to bugle on it anymore, but you can certainly, do cow vocalizations on it. So you can continue to use that reed. And also sometimes on those reeds, if you take them out of your mouth, let them dry out, that latex will kind of stiffen back up a little bit to where you could get a few bugles out of it before it gets too soaked with saliva, and then it goes back to where it won't hold that note anymore. So you don't need to make it as loud as you can. I make better elk sounds when I do less air or thrust of air. It does not always sound better to go huge volume. They just easy breath creates more realistic sound. So I'm going to agree with Danny on that. It's not always there's a time for volume, Just like there are times you don't want volume, you have to match the situation. That's the key. So, Tony, I consider myself to be an experienced caller, but man, do I have a hard time getting bulls to come in. They respond, but oftentimes they give me the middle hoof as they're running away. Well, Tony, that's okay. So, my question to you is what are you saying? That's the biggest thing right there. What are you saying? And what type of responses are you getting back? Are they giving you location contact type sounds and you're giving them aggressive defensive type sounds? So that's the situation there that kind of goes back to the question of understanding what you're saying. So, Justin, when would you rake brush along with a cow call rather than bugle? You can throw a cow call in while you're raking brush. You're just giving the, appearance that there's a bull raking and there's a cow right there with him. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You're almost making the sound of two different elk at the same time when you're putting those over on top of each other. So, Tony, any tips on getting them into shooting range? Yes. Head to elkcallingacademy.com and become a Patreon member and go through the videos. So just kidding, Tony. But no, on the Patreon page, we do have the whole instructional video series where we basically break down all the elk vocalizations, all the cow vocalizations, all the bull vocalizations, what they mean, how to do them. And right now we're just getting into how to use those sounds out in the field. So Wyoming elk fever. Do you think you can throw your call with a tube? To some extent. I mean, elk are really, really good at pinpointing where that sound came from. Because you've got to understand, they're used to bulls already bugling, whether they're facing them, whether to the side, or whether they're bugling away. But they can still pinpoint that sound. I mean, the location where that sound came from, it's amazing. I've seen them walk from a couple hundred yards out right to the very bush that I bugled from. It blows me away every time that happens. So I wish we could do that. As soon as we heard them bugle, we know exactly and pinpointed them the way they can pinpoint us. So ELK is the maker of the Power Bugle, not Primos. Yeah, I said ELK, didn't I? I didn't think I said Primos. Can you do a sample of the Scary Bite and Blow calf call? Can't seem to find any sound samples of what it's supposed to be like. Steven, yeah, I can see if I can find some of the scary calls and do a little video on those. So, Jeff, if bull is close to you, bugle without the tube. No, I will still use the tube. I will just back off my airflow so the volume actually comes down. So I control the volume of that bugle with my air. So, sorry, I meant tired from blowing, or maybe winded is a better term. This makes me want to be in September. I know. Have you recognized the difference in calling tactics while in an area with heavy hunting traffic? And if so, mocking doesn't always work. How do you go about captivating their attention? So Northwest, my big thing that we focus on and what I do is the breeding sequence. It doesn't matter where I'm hunting. It's just that's the tactic, that's the approach and the sequence that I use. I've just found it just dawned on me one year that, these bulls are looking, they're looking for cows. They're looking to breed. That's what the rut's about. So why not do a calling scenario, or why not do a sequence where you're mimicking that breeding sequence? Why not give them what they're looking for? Also, you guys have been there when you've been into a drainage. At least those of you that have been out hunting, you've been into a drainage where there's a hot cow and there's a breeding sequence going on. You've experienced the excitement of that area. You know what it's like. You know how much excitement that creates. So why not duplicate that same thing? But that's also where it comes into understanding vocalizations and understanding what is being said back to you, and then maximizing or basically capitalizing on that information. They're giving you information. They're giving you information of what they like, what their mindset is, all of that. So why not take the time to understand all of these vocalizations so that you can capitalize on that and increase your opportunities? It's just like if you go to a foreign country without learning their language and you start talking to somebody in English, but then you shift to Spanish and then you finish it with French. Okay, they're probably not really going to understand what you're saying, especially if they speak Portuguese. So that's what I think where a lot of people kind of stumble on. They think a cow call is a cow call and a bugle is a bugle, and I'm just going to go out and I'm just going to cow call and I'm just going to bugle. But they struggle. I mean, yeah, you can get in the right scenario that you can find the bull in one mindset and then bang, they're running in. But if you take the time to understand and learn those different vocalizations and what's being said and the different meanings, you're going to find that your opportunities are actually going to increase. So, okay, we answered that one. Jeff, you ever had one freak out from the change in sound without the tube? So, oh, that's in response to the other one. No, I've always just used the tube. So, have you ever used location bugles during preseason scouting? If so, how early is too early? Um, yes, Chad, I have, but usually I don't start trying location bugles until middle of August. So I haven't really tried it earlier than that. And I just do it middle of August because that's kind of the one of the last times of really swapping out cards, and I'm just eager to hear that first bugle of the year. I don't want to wait until opening morning. So, Aaron, best way to start pulling a herd bull out of the center of his cows and smaller bulls? Well, Aaron, it really depends on the situation. So if that herd bull has a hot cow, it's going to be almost impossible to pull that bull away. Even with the breeding sequence that we do, he already has a hot cow right there that he knows is hot. He doesn't know 100% how hot my cow is in the breeding sequence. So, but if he doesn't have a hot cow and he's just with the herd, he's going to be just as curious as your hot cow in the breeding sequence that you can actually pull him. The key is because he has those cows and he has all those other smaller bulls hanging around, he's not going to go that far away from the herd because he doesn't want to leave them unattended. So you're going to have to be really close on that one. So Jay Colley, hey boss, you said it a while ago about doing a get together there in Boise. You come up with anything yet? A shoot get together. Funny you should bring that up, Jay, because yes, I started a conversation 2 nights ago for Elk Fest. So we are just in the early planning stages of it. It's obviously not going to be this year. A lot of work to happen with this. It is a multi-company group effort to put it together. But we are planning to get together and really start the planning process of figuring out everything we want to have involved in it, where we're going to have it, when we're going to have it, and all of that stuff. So short answer, yes, we have started putting something together. We just don't know all of the details yet. So, Danny, can you just tell me how to get a 400 class bull in to stand broadside at 20 yards for like 5 minutes so I can first change my pants, then still take the shot? Is that asking too much? Danny, the fact that I've never had that happen for me, I don't really know if I have a good answer for you on that one. All right, Chad, great question. What's your thoughts on hunting burns? How soon after the burn and how far into the burn? So I did a. There is a Wapiti Wednesday Q&A from a while ago that talks about hunting burns. So would definitely recommend you going to the YouTube channel, going into playlist or Wapiti Wednesday Q&A, and then find that episode on burns. But basically, Chad, in a nutshell, it really depends on what type of burn it is, how hot that fire went, how long it went. Um, how is the vegetation growing back? But how soon after the burn? I've seen elk come right back into a burn after the flames have gone by, just to get in there and get on the ash and start jumping on those, plush grasses and plush shoots that start growing. How far into the burn? I'll go as far in as long as there's elk there. But yeah, I like hunting old burns, whether it's, current year, past years. But again, it all depends on how hot. If it's an extremely hot that just burns everything and it looks like the surface of the moon, maybe not so much. But if it kind of burns in this mosaic pattern where it grew, where it burns this group of trees, skips this one, burns here, skips that. Those areas are good areas because it still has that protective nature of the unburnt trees, but it also gives the openness of the burned areas that allows good vegetation, for those elk to go in and feed. So bugle me this: wouldn't calling them in before season smarten them up? Come and find nothing, kind of like you shouldn't go calling in gobblers. Well, nobody said we were calling them in. All we were talking about is just one location bugle, get a response, that's it. I don't sit there and have a continuous conversation with them. It's no different than you walking around in the morning doing location bugles. Now, here's the other thing: calling them in, smarten them up. You know what? We're gonna save that. We're gonna save call shy elk for next week. So because I will go on a tangent about that, and I'm not going to do it right now because we are coming to the tail end of tonight. Jeff, does breeding sequence work on September 1st? Absolutely. I do the breeding sequence from first day of the season. For us is August 30th all the way to the end. So, because again, it's understanding the biology of cows that older Wyoming elk fever. I know. Hey, how's that for a cliffhanger or cutting a show off saying, come back next week for this. So sorry, I had to, but I know I'll get going on a tangent on that if I don't. So, but anyways, Jeff, getting back, that you can have older cows that come into cycle that first part of September. Everybody thinks that everything comes in at this time, the peak rut. This is when all cows are bred. That's not the case. You can have older cows come in early, and then they have different cycles. So, all right, guys, we got the 2-minute clock started on Instagram, so we are going to wrap this up for tonight. There's a ton more questions. Let me see if we can just hit a couple real quick. Nice to see your water bottle has dents in it too. Yeah, it actually took a nice tumble off of. I was testing the durability of it. Not really. I dropped it. So, would ferns or oak brush be viable food source for elk? Maybe the leaves. So, maybe an episode on e-scouting sometime. I'm a beginner from Indiana and need tips. Again, Jeff, Patreon page. I'm getting ready to drop a tutorial on Cal Topo. That's dropping Friday in there. And then I also have a tutorial coming next week on my #1 tube that I use. All right, good stuff tonight, brother. So thank you guys. Thank you for tuning in. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for everyone. Real quick. Are you going to the RMEF elk camp in July for elk calling contest? Yes, I will be in Park City, Utah. So appreciate each and every one of you. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to do this. As always, keep calling, keep practicing. Most importantly, though, have fun while you're doing it. And we will see you guys all next week on the next episode of Wapiti Wednesday Q&A. Have a great week, everybody.